Hello, innovators. I'm Todd and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Applied Software. You're invited to join our MEP and construction innovation adventure with a mission to propel this great industry forward. My guest today is Carole Filion. She is an industry consultant that has spent 15 years working in construction software in various capacities. Her involvement ranges from technical and educational communications to product marketing, providing the interpretation and translation between product management and industry end users. Carole has seen firsthand the various construction process pain points that the right technology could address to help businesses become more efficient and profitable. Her focus has been and continues to be to give voice to the industry and open the channels of communication in order to help construction management and staff gain a better understanding of strategies, products, and best practices. And we're both active members of the Construction Progress Coalition dedicated to helping to advance the industry. Welcome to the show, Carole.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Me as well. So how'd you get into construction to begin with?
Oh my goodness, kind of haphazardly, really. And it was really through the technology side. So I've never been a boots on the ground person. It's always been technology from that. I mean, the closest I've come to being a boots on the ground type person was driving the last nail in somebody's dock. So that was it.
hey, that's all right. That's all right. I'm in that same boat. You probably wouldn't want to live in or work in anything that I built for you anyway. So it takes all kinds of people.
So there's a kindred spirit there.
That's right.
But the thing with technology, though, but I've always been a tech nerd, and that's been my entire career, has been involved in technology in different capacities and for different industries.
Yeah.
So with construction, I found it fascinating, actually, because at the time, this was, we're talking well over 15 years ago, that it was more, the technology piece was, I wouldn't say in its infancy, but it was just really starting to take off. And sure. So that's where I found it really, really interesting, because it was a merging of two very different worlds. And yeah. So that was it for me. Yeah. So, and it was as a tech writer, to be honest. So it was really getting into the weeds and understanding not only their pain points, but how the solution solved it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially from a technical writer taking something that can be incredibly complex and tedious and trying to not dumb it down, but try to put it in layman's terms as well too, that somebody can understand it and not just the super technical.
No, absolutely. And the thing that I found too was that, I mean, at the time, historically providers had, they would take a look at the processes and then they try to translate it into their technology. And that was where then they try to emulate what they were doing in their respective technologies. Well, that was all well and good, but I think especially from the technology side, so I was kind of sitting in the middle, right? So from the technology side, they were thinking, well, you know what? Anybody working in this, they're going to understand the language. They're going to see that ring of familiarity, and they'll just be able to pick this up by osmosis.
Yeah. How'd that work for them?
Hand on the buzzer. So it was an interesting time. So that was where I was essentially bridging the gap between what the technology provider was imagining and what was actually being delivered. And so at the time too, yes, there'd be some training that came with it, of course. They wouldn't just, but that training was really feeding them with a fire hose. And it was also, well, if that's not enough, then there is very specific training, and that would cost a little bit more. So their initial investment would always kind of get ratcheted up. And I think that made some people kind of wary about investing in technology, to be honest. So yeah, that was my observation at the time.
Yeah, that scope creep was real.
So very real. Yeah.
Your vantage point then, what have you noticed when it comes to tech adoption throughout the construction industry? What are some of the trends that have been happening recently?
Well, it's really kind of interesting because I keep there's a French saying that keeps coming to my brain, and that is plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. And what that means is that the more things change, the more things stay the same.
Yeah, that is very true. It's very true.
in some ways, but because I mean, still, if there isn't a compelling reason to adopt, nothing's going to change. There has to be a direct line between increased productivity, reduced rework, and all of those good buzzwords that we hear all the time. But I think that what's happened and what's been really interesting is the last 2 years, we've all been forced to pivot. And so it's not just construction, but construction especially. So for those, I mean, that's been a good and a bad thing in terms of having to adopt that technology at breakneck speeds.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a good and a bad thing. So good in that those that were already on board the technology train, they got it, they hit the ground running, they were fine. Those that were sitting on the fence got off real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And those that were never really convinced had to jump in and almost sort of, Keystone Cops a little bit. Not, I don't want to make it sound like really, but it was kind of a forced change. And forced change sometimes, it's that, what is it, the first laws of entropy? The more with an increase of activity, there's an equal or greater increase in waste.
Yeah.
So then that was, they caught up, and a lot of them, to their credit, have just done phenomenal in terms of being able to weather that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always been really impressed with that kind of resilience, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for, because if an industry has ever had to be resilient, construction is it.
Oh,
right?
For sure. But I think that what the last 2 years really proved in the construction industry is, the people that were on the fence proved several things. The people that were on the fence, they were forced into changing and embracing tech, but they realized that it wasn't as scary maybe as what they thought it was, and that some of the tech was actually ready for prime time when they were just kind of sitting there with their arms folded across the chest and like, I don't want to do it, until they had to, and then they found that it wasn't. I totally lost my train of thought there.
Oh no, it's okay. But I think I'm following you though. But I think what the part that maybe was less scary for them as well is that once they did jump on board the technology train, they found their providers to become more of a partner rather than just somebody selling them a bill of goods. It isn't a question of that. And you brought up the Construction Progress Coalition, and I think that's why their work is so important, because that's what they do, right? As they bring together, the construction companies, the industry partners, the technology providers together at the table. No branding, no selling, no nothing. It's having good, honest discussion, unpacking stuff and going, all right, how do we fix this? Mm-hmm. Or what is there to fix? Is it something that needs to be fixed? It's having that conversation. And I think that's where it's been an eye-opening experience for those that were on the fence, like you said, and those that maybe wouldn't had their arms crossed, that didn't want to jump on. Their providers became more like partners.
Yeah,
and
I agree
it
with
puts
that.
their mind at ease.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing when you bring up, bringing people, different voices and stakeholders around the table, the last 2 years has made it easier for that to happen, because you don't have to be there in person, and those barriers for conversation became a lot lower. And so you could jump on a Zoom call and spend 15 minutes, 30 minutes chatting it up with somebody that you probably would never have access to, or through LinkedIn, and reach out that way as well too. So I think you were able in a strange way to work and grow your network and build relationships in the digital world, even though you weren't physically around each other. Now it's awesome that things are opening back up, and I'm super excited to be physically around people again. But
oh my gosh, no kidding, aren't we all?
There's blessings to both. So
absolutely.
One of the things that we chatted about before the episode was the psychology aspect of tech adoption as well too, and how that factors into it. What are your thoughts on maybe the psychological barriers or hurdles that people have to kind of climb over in order to really truly embrace the tech world?
Yeah, there's a number there are a number of barriers for sure. And I think psychology, I like the term, I'm not afraid of it, but a lot of people find it a scary term.
Sure.
When really at the end of the day, it's really about understanding human behavior.
Mhm.
That's the part that really is, and I think at the very basic, it just to have a basic understanding of, like, who are your introverts and who are your extroverts, even just as basic as that, and understanding what makes them tick and how, and who's going to work well with somebody else, and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So from that perspective, I find that the psychology in terms of tech adoption, you're going to find different people respond differently based on their own personality, their personas, their, that kind of thing. Now, one of the things that I've been part of a couple of panels, and in at least two of them, the topic of champions came up. And I think that is absolutely brilliant, especially having champions throughout the organization. So you've got, in the C-suite as well as out in the field, and you've got, and all throughout that chain, you've got a champion that is the ambassador for that tech. They understand the tech, they know how to run it, and they can be like kind of like the support to that particular cluster, if you will, to their own individual piece of that of the chain. And that way there's a comfort level, and B, it gives people, the champions especially, it gives them an opportunity to kind of broaden their own roles. I think that for any business owner, that absolutely drives engagement and loyalty, because that's an investment in their human assets by placing or starting a champions kind of approach to doing things. So whether that be the champions for tech adoption, whether that's champions in terms of dealing with the data, content sprawl, whatever, right? It's address the problem and where it sits in throughout the workflow or throughout the chain, and get those people and have them come forward and say, you know what, I can do this. I can actually take care of this. I'd love to do that. Because, you get to a point, you do your job, you know how to put out the fires, you know how to, right? It becomes routine. But this is a way of not only being able to get more engaged in the company, in a company-wide effort, it's also an opportunity to kind of broaden your own scope, their own individual scope.
Yeah, sure. So I think you said two things were really profound in that answer. One is don't underestimate the importance of just social dynamics in a group, and you want people to form a group that works well together, that they form a tight, cohesive culture. And I think some people probably hear me say that and they're like, oh, we're not going to sit around and sing Kumbaya. I'm not talking about everybody agreeing with each other all the time. I'm talking about just dynamics working, and you can challenge somebody and still get along with them. You think well of them, even if you don't agree on everything. And so I think that's really important to foster that. And then the second thing that you said that really stood out to me is, and you didn't necessarily phrase it in these words, so I'm going to paraphrase it, but really lean into the person's passion. And if they are excited about something and you see them kind of lighting up when they're talking about it and they're passionate to go do it themselves, lean into that and empower the employee to say, all right, you brought up this issue, go find some results, go find some solutions and bring it back. And let's pull you into this process and make you the champion and a key stakeholder in that.
Absolutely. Right down to, hey, if you need a budget, let me know what it is. If we can make it work, we will. If we can't, all right, find another way. But it challenges them to be, they're a piece of that puzzle. Now they're trying to figure out, all right, I know where I fit in now.
Well, it gives them ownership of like, they're going to make it want to work as well too.
Absolutely. And I'm so impressed because there are a lot of construction companies that are out there that have what you would call like a cultural commitment to their human assets. They'll have mentorship programs, internal leadership training, scholarships, internships, those types of things. I think those are super important. But the champions thing is even another layer of that. That's using your existing staff and giving them, like you said, ownership in that process and in the company.
Right.
So, and I truly believe that does drive engagement and loyalty. And, at the end of the day, even if they want to boil it down, they think, like, I'm going to use your phrase instead of, okay, if it's sitting around singing Kumbaya, then tell me this, riddle me this. How much is it going to cost you to replace that employee? As opposed to finding ways to keep them.
Right.
Kumbaya, here we go.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Everybody sing along.
Absolutely. And, I think it's a cool trend that I agree that there's more construction companies that are putting this kind of front and center and putting more resources to it. I think a potential hurdle in more adopting it is it's almost a bit countercultural to the construction industry, because in order to empower the employee to go kind of run with their passion, you're going to have to also give them the space and the freedom to say, it's okay if you fail and it doesn't work the exact way that you are thinking, but we're going to use this as a learning experience and learn from it and grow from it and strive for that continual improvement. And that's kind of scary, because failure is a 4-letter word that nobody wants to talk about, especially in construction. When margins are tight, you got to be on point all the time.
Right. I mean, and there are no failures. There are lessons. Period. And if we can shift our thinking to looking at it that way, then it makes a big difference.
How do you encourage that information to really be bubbled up from the end users, the people that are, dealing with the day-to-day problems of their workflow or whatever's going on?
Right. Okay. So first off, they're working on the day-to-day, like you said. So that's the first challenge. So what you want to do is you want to be able to find a way that is easy for them to convey that information in the moment. Now, if you have an introvert and an extrovert, I'm going to go back to this, right? You ever fill out those forms that say, how do you want us to contact you?
Oh,
and one is phone and the other one is email.
Yeah.
What do you think the introverts are going to do? Email me, right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
the extroverts getting their energy from people, being around people, call me. I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. And so they're different, right? You got to be able to put in the super easy mechanisms in place to be able to bubble that up. So whether that's a Slack channel, or, hey, pick up the phone, this is your point person, that's who needs to know this, or email, a text message, WhatsApp, whatever. If whatever works in the moment, that's where you take advantage of that technology. Even if it is getting on a quick Zoom call and go, okay, now this is pressing. Otherwise, I would have waited, but this is pressing. So can we talk about this real quick? Then it's a phone call.
Reduce the friction.
So it's reduce the friction. Thank you. That's my favorite word, honestly. When it comes to that, seriously, there is so much of it that it's in our effort to make things easier, we've made things so complicated.
Way more complicated.
Absolutely. So if we just boil it down to, okay, these are the people that are out there. This is what they deal with. So what would be the easiest way for them to send that information?
Yeah.
Right. And there always is. That's why so many technologies now have like apps on the iPad.
Right.
Right. Because they're doing it right then and there.
I'd love to get your thoughts on how people should really think about training as they're looking to adopt a new technology.
The training is only as good as what's actually going to be applied. So training, I think, needs to happen in smaller chunks. I think that's something that we kind of missed the boat on a lot of the times. I keep thinking back of when I learned how to ski, right? You do it without the poles first, right? You're just getting to know how to turn, and and then you add, then you keep adding to it, but
Right.
you need to get that quick hit of training, go digest, go apply it. All right, you're good with that? Good. Let's go to the next one.
Mhm.
Go digest, go apply it, and so on and so forth. It needs to be built in layers. And there are a lot of companies that are out there that really understand this and they
Mhm.
know how to roll it out.
Yeah.
And so, that's another thing that I think that the construction industry should be working with outside people that know their skills. They either know training or they know about human behavior. If they're having a particular problem, or maybe things aren't bubbling up from the field or whatever, there are so many companies that are out there that can do this kind of thing.
Mhm.
I'm not one of them, by the way. So, but I know a lot of people in that field. So I think that's one of the things that, like I said, we missed the boat on it because we figure, okay, well, listen, we'll take that way and then go, you go go learn this, and they get fed with a fire hose. They come back, they're a deer in the headlight, and then the pressure's on them to be able to apply what they've learned, and they'll maybe retain 10% of it.
Right.
So
If
why
they're
not
lucky.
just teach them? Yeah. So why not just teach them at 10%, send them away, let them do that,
Mhm.
and come back. It just, it's an incremental thing. It has
Right.
to be.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
It has to be incremental. You can't just go conquer that black diamond on your first run. Probably not going to end very well for you.
It
There's a
wouldn't
reason they
have
have
for
those colored
me.
tier systems. That would be, some mountains are
Got it.
trickier than others. They just
Yeah,
sharp turn
know the
off and
shape.
you are,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. Know the shape. Know the shape.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Who should people really be looking to for some inspiration when they're thinking through the culture and, um, you know, creating a healthy environment for the company?
Two of the people that I like to follow are Simon Sinek and Gary Vaynerchuk. And
Yeah.
Simon Sinek is because I love him and his start with why.
Mhm.
And if I would have any recommendation for anybody, is go find his start with why YouTube presentation for TEDx, and it's mind blowing. It's brilliant. And I mean, he's built an entire industry on it because it makes so much sense. It is
Mhm.
so brilliant because unless people know why they're doing what they're doing, they're not gonna, nothing is gonna happen. Everything is gonna be dead in the water. And people don't buy, that's his line, right? It's like people don't buy what you do, they
Mhm.
buy why you do it.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's a huge shift in perspective.
Oh, for sure. It's funny. The unpacking the why has come up in so many of the recent conversations that I've been having,
Yeah,
and it's on people's minds. It's front and center,
it is.
and not just the why from the top.
Mhm.
It's the why to every stakeholder along the way and every vantage point on that. Because while the core stays the same, how you're
Mhm.
talking about that and there's nuances that are different from somebody that's, you know, swinging a hammer in the field versus sitting in the office and it's the CEO of the company. They're the company why is the same, but their why and their impact on the company obviously is going to be different. And so you
Right.
need to explain it from those different angles and get everybody bought in to the
Mhm.
commonality why of the company.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I agree with everything you just said. Those were all great words.
Sometimes I can string together a sentence, not all the time. Sometimes I really struggle.
Those were all great words. Loved them.
So let's kind of shift over into the
Mhm.
provider perspective. Do you think
Okay.
it's incumbent on providers, the software providers, to make it less intimidating for people to embrace new tech? And if so, how would you advise they go about that?
I think it's incumbent on both the tech provider and the companies that
Uh-huh.
the consumers of
Yeah.
that technology. I think it's a partnership, as I mentioned earlier. This is where I've been happy to see that there have been a lot of technology companies that have like customer advisory boards, that kind of thing, where they take a sampling
Mhm.
of their most engaged and power user uh, customers, and
Yeah.
they have that roundtable discussion and hash out some of the shared pains and so on and so forth, which is great. That's very specific to their technology. But and they also, and having their own customer experience days and those types of things. I think that is where the tech providers are doing a great job in terms of getting involved and becoming partners. But yeah, it's incumbent on them to kind of find ways to make it so that it's more a conversation. And I'm going to refer back to one of my favorite TV shows, which is New Amsterdam. And his line is, "How can I help?" Because that's really what they're there for. They're there to help.
Yeah.
But there's that perceived, right? That
Sure.
maybe a little bit of, and that's, I think, kind of like an unspoken friction, maybe, right? That kind of, that seems to be there, but it's not. It's incumbent on the provider to be able to always be in the servant leadership role.
Yeah.
Lead with a servant's mind and a servant's heart, to be able to understand what it is that would make it easier for their client, their customer, and also open the door to that customer being able to have a positive impact, perhaps on the product roadmap, on where that product should go. And that's where those conversations, again, the CPC opens the door to that. But like I said, a lot of companies with the customer advisory boards, they do a great job in doing that. They do a great job with customer advisory boards and opening those doors and having those conversations, so that their product then can go into the direction that is going to serve not only their best clients, but also the rest of their followers.
Yeah, absolutely. I more than agree with all that. So if we flip it then on, because you said there's a partnership there, which I agree.
Yeah.
What's the role of the leader of the construction firm in the process?
I think to ask the hard questions. You want to make sure, they have to, right? I mean, it's their job. They have to do their due diligence. The tech provider is ready for that. They should be. And if they're not, well, that's then back to the drawing board, but they have to do their due diligence. What is it that works? What is it that doesn't? Just because nothing is going to be working 100% and line up exactly unless there's, some sort of customization or that kind of thing. But what you want to do is you want to see how aligned this particular technology is with your SOPs, for example, right? You want to make sure that there's at least the important pieces, right? What is it that lines up? What's the nice to have? What's the need to have? They need to be crystal clear on what the need to have is. If that isn't met, you either need to keep looking. If you can't find it, find the one that is going to be most flexible in terms of helping you meet that need to have for your company.
Yeah. Do you think that a lot of construction companies have thought through what the need to have list is, or when it comes to technology, are they looking through the different software providers and just kind of getting overwhelmed of like, well, that feature I think I need, but this feature I also think I need, and they're not on the same platform. What do I do? I don't know.
Absolutely. And it depends on who you talk to within that company,
Sure,
right? The IT
sure.
person's going to have their own needs. The owner's going to have his or her own needs. Right? Everybody has a project manager or product PX is going to have their own needs. Everybody is going to have their own needs. So it depends on who you talk to. So at the end of the day, whoever is making the decision needs to be able to identify, all right, who's influencing this? Who's actually going to be using the software? Because if it comes from the top down and the end user wasn't involved in the selection process, that it's never going to
They
get
don't
there.
have
I
any
mean, how
stake in it, so
many,
they don't care.
exactly. I mean, how many, we've seen this, right? I mean, how many times
Sure.
does a particular solution just get shelved, and it was probably perfect for them, but they had no way of leveraging it because they didn't have end user buy-in. Again, this is where the champions come in. And the champions can start right at that level. At the time that they're looking, then you put your team together. Who are your stakeholders? Who are the personas that actually need this and need to use it? And what are the predictive analytics that you're trying to pull from this? If this is the type of product that it is, like, what is it that you need to have, and what would be nice to have?
Yeah.
The nice to haves shouldn't, but like you said, everybody, well, I think I want this, I think I want that. They know their business, and everyone should know their individual piece of that business. So they come to the table with their need to have through their champions, or as the champions representing that area, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's another good opportunity place for that partnership to shine, and that the tech provider can come and say, hey, these are the kind of personas that we see often needing to have a voice in this process, in this conversation, and we want to make sure that their concerns or questions are heard throughout this process. And so they're coming to the table, kind of bringing that industry standard list, if you will. And then the construction company, it's the onus is on the culture aspect of that company to be empowering their people, to be finding what their employees are passionate about, and encouraging those concerns and those, hey, this could be done better, to be bubbled up. And so they've already kind of pointed out their champions, even if they haven't totally unleashed them on a particular project, but they know that Johnny is really passionate about RFIs, and so if you're going to do an RFI, you're going to go over to Johnny, where other people have their own other areas of interest too. So I
absolutely
think it's important for both.
And when you're going back to your original question of how can construction companies, what is it that they need to do in order to be able to identify it right out of the gate? Ask for use cases, ask for customer testimonials, because in those testimonials they'll find hints, right? When I'm looking for something and I'm looking for a review, I look for specific stuff, not just what the marketing material tells me. And I'm not saying anything against marketing, I'm into marketing, so it's all good. But sometimes some people will get into the weeds and they'll say specific things in those reviews that you kind of go, oh yeah, I could use that. Oh, okay, that makes sense to me. So get those use cases, get those customer testimonials, find out, it's like, hey, give me your top 3 clients and see if I can call them. Call them.
Yeah.
Why not?
Right.
Why not? This is a big investment. This is your livelihood. This is your livelihood. You're going to make a big investment. You're proposing to make a big investment. And it is, and big is relative, right? But it's not just the purchase of it. It's the training, the upkeep, right? And making sure that it's getting leveraged, and the time that it's going to take.
Yeah.
So,
I agree. Well, if you could snap your fingers, I'm giving you all construction power. If you could snap your fingers and innovate one thing in the industry, what would you innovate?
Oh, man. Oh, that's a really good question. I think it's going to sound really simplistic, but finding that way that everything is digitalized and searchable. Because the minute it goes to paper, it's off the grid. So whatever needs to be done, and that's a combination of the technology, the end user buy-in, and that would be giant finger snap there, but it's that. I think that's the part that is probably that's utopia, but
that would be
but
that'd be an awesome power grab,
right?
Power source.
Oh, absolutely. Because and because of human behavior, right? When you're stressed and things are going at rapid fire speed, then and you're gonna go, okay, hang on, I don't remember how I'm supposed to be doing it. Forget it. I'm going to do it in this.
Mm. You go back to what you're comfortable with.
Exactly. So, and that what they were comfortable with might not necessarily be on the grid anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where that would be whatever can pull all of that in to, and just that would be my magic.
Yeah.
Finger snap. That's
all
I can think of.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, switching out of the construction realm for a minute, you are a wine expert is
my goodness,
the word on the street and the rumor. So what is something about wine that people should know, but most people don't?
One thing they should know that they don't. Okay. So, well, they do, but I don't think they realize that wine is a living thing. It's living in that bottle. It's been around for thousands of years. The wine, or not that particular bottle, you know what I mean? I wouldn't drink that, but
might turn into something else after a couple thousand years.
Exactly.
Or it would be an amazing, very highly sought after wine.
Right. Right. But yeah, it's a living thing. Like you can have like, let's say you buy a case of Bordeaux, and it's a 5-year-old Bordeaux. You have that first bottle out of the case, and then you store the rest. You have another bottle 3 years down the road, completely different experience. Another 5 years down the road, even like, wow, I didn't realize I bought this. This is really good wine. I didn't realize, like, when did we get this? Right? Yeah. It's that kind of thing, because it's evolving, and so long as it's stored properly, but it's always evolving, and it's always changing. There isn't any set thing to wine, and I think that's what I like about it. I mean, it's everything coming into play. It's the terroir, the way that it's manipulated, the way the grapes are grown, the way what side of the slope that the sun was facing, and all that good stuff. All of that comes into play, because you can have a Chardonnay from California and you can have a Chardonnay from France, but because of the very different climates, completely different wine. One is going to be way more acidic, and the other one is going to have a bigger, bolder taste. So it fascinates me. There are so many factors that come into play. So that's what, I think that if there's one thing, don't assume that just because you like Pinot Noir, that it's going to be the same if you buy a Pinot Noir from California, or you get one from New Zealand, or you get one from France.
Yeah.
Know what you're getting, and do a little bit of research on it.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. When you were talking, it made me think it's really, and I've never made this connection before, but it's really, it's a great analogy of construction, of how construction projects get built. Everything's a little bit different. They might do it a little bit different in Boston versus down here in Atlanta versus over West Coast in San Fran. And,
oh my gosh,
all the culture
Todd,
plays in,
brilliant.
the tech mix. I think that's really cool. That might be the name of this podcast episode. Wine and construction have in common, but I think that's a great example. I love it.
Yeah, that's actually a great analogy. I love this. I'm going to steal that. Sorry, I'm telling you that right now.
It's called R&D, rip off and duplicate.
I love it.
Well, how do people find out more information and connect with you?
You find me on LinkedIn, and it's Carole with an E. So and it's not Filion spelt like Filion, like Nathan Filion. It's only one L. So that's the way I like to describe it.
Nice.
I like to kind of lie a little bit when I've had too much wine to say that Nathan Filion's my ex-husband, but he's not.
That's awesome. I like it. Well, last question for you. What does innovation mean to you?
Oh my goodness. Innovation is, well, kind of like what the marriage of creativity and discipline.
Nice.
That's
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's where creativity meets discipline.
Nice. So
we all have ideas and everything else, but you got to have the discipline to make it happen.
Yeah. So the innovation is the action part of creativity.
Yes.
I like it. So I asked all my guests that as the closing question, and whatever 140 episodes or whatever number we're in now.
Wow.
I always get a different answer and different shades of what innovation is. And so I think it's fascinating.
Interesting.
I've never gotten that combination in that equation before.
Oh, cool.
That's
well, I'm
awesome.
glad I did.
That's great.
Yeah, okay, good.
Spot on. I like it.
You asked that question, so I'm glad I didn't go back over.
You're good. No, it's always new ground. I keep waiting. I mean, there's some commonalities and themes that pop up, but it's always slightly different shade of it, which is awesome.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, Carole, thanks so much. This was great. It's so much fun catching up with you and talking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thanks for the work that you do. This is great because having these types of conversations, I think, is what really, really feeds the industry and teaches the industry and opens up the channels of communication. So thanks for the work you do, Todd.
Yeah, absolutely. More conversations, the better, I say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.